A countdown timer, a slogan you catch yourself believing, a snake cut into 8 pieces. The same tricks that started a country 250 years ago are being pulled on you right now, and you feel patriotic, generous, smart while they run. And it all ends with a single pair of reading glasses that once stopped a coup in under a minute. Hold on to that.
A countdown timer, a slogan you catch yourself believing, a snake cut into 8 pieces. The same tricks that started a country 250 years ago are being pulled on you right now. And you feel patriotic, generous, smart while they run. And it all ends with a single pair of reading glasses that once stopped a coup in under a minute. Hold on to that.
Okay, so picture this. It's late. The blue light of your phone is the only thing awake in the room. You didn't really want the thing in your cart, the shoes, the course, the subscription, whatever it is. But there's a little red number in the corner of the screen, and it's ticking. 9 minutes, 41 seconds, 40, 39. And something in your chest does this small, cold flip, this tiny jolt, like a door swinging shut somewhere just out of reach. You're not gonna miss out, right? You've got 9 whole minutes, but your thumb is already moving toward the button. And the strangest part, the part I really want you to sit with, is that you feel smart doing it, decisive, like you're the one making the call.
Okay, so picture this. It's late. The blue light of your phone is the only thing awake in the room. You didn't really want the thing in your cart, the shoes, the course, the subscription, whatever it is. But there's a little red number in the corner of the screen, and it's ticking. 9 minutes, 41 seconds, 40, 39. And something in your chest does this small, cold flip, this tiny jolt, like a door swinging shut somewhere just out of reach. You're not going to miss out, right? You've got 9 whole minutes. But your thumb is already moving toward the button. And the strangest part, the part I really want you to sit with, is that you feel smart doing it. Decisive. Like you're the one making the call.
And earlier that same day, you scrolled past a political slogan. 4 words, maybe 5. You've seen it so many times now. On a lawn sign, in a comment, on a hat, in your own uncle's text messages, that when it floated by this time, you caught yourself nodding. Just a small nod. Agreement you never actually decided to give. It just felt true. It felt like something you already believed, arriving home.
And earlier that same day, you scrolled past a political slogan. 4 words, maybe 5. You've seen it so many times now, on a lawn sign, in a comment, on a hat, in your own uncle's text messages, that when it floated by this time, you caught yourself nodding. Just a small nod. Agreement you never actually decided to give. It just felt true. It felt like something you already believed, arriving home.
You weren't manipulated, though. That's what you tell me. You were just shopping, just scrolling, just being a normal person with normal opinions on a normal Tuesday.
You weren't manipulated, though. That's what you'd tell me. You were just shopping, just scrolling, just being a normal person with normal opinions on a normal Tuesday.
Yeah, here's the thing that should honestly freak you out a little. That exact jolt in your chest, that little nod of agreement you never chose, those aren't new. That machinery is old. That machinery is 250 years old at least. Because the countdown timer, the repeated slogan, the tidy image that beats the messy truth, the enemy that makes you feel like you belong, every one of those levers was pulled, deliberately, brilliantly, by a small group of colonists between 1754 and 1783. And when they pulled those levers, an entire country fell out the other side. A nation was born inside people's heads before a single decisive shot was fired. And the people it was pulled on, they didn't feel manipulated either. They felt patriotic. They felt brave. They felt like heroes of their own story. Every last one of them.
Yeah, here's the thing that should honestly freak you out a little. That exact jolt in your chest, that little nod of agreement you never chose, those aren't new. That machinery is old. That machinery is 250 years old at least. Because the countdown timer, the repeated slogan, the tidy image that beats the messy truth, the enemy that makes you feel like you belong, every one of those levers was pulled, deliberately, brilliantly, by a small group of colonists between 1754 and 1783. And when they pulled those levers, an entire country fell out the other side. A nation was born inside people's heads before a single decisive shot was fired. And the people it was pulled on? They didn't feel manipulated either. They felt patriotic. They felt brave. They felt like heroes of their own story. Every last one of them.
And that, Right there is where we're going tonight.
And that, right there, is where we're going tonight.
If this stuff hooks you the way it hooks me, the way one thread runs from a snake cartoon in a colonial newspaper straight to the timer on your checkout screen, then hit subscribe. Honestly, that's the whole pitch. I'm not going to do the little dance. I'm not going to ask you again in 12 minutes. I'm not going to guilt you at the end. Just, if the curtain pulling back is your kind of thing, come along for the rest of these. That's it. Now let's get into the actual madness.
If this stuff hooks you the way it hooks me, the way one thread runs from a snake cartoon in a colonial newspaper straight to the timer on your checkout screen, then hit subscribe. Honestly, that's the whole pitch. I'm not going to do the little dance. I'm not going to ask you again in 12 minutes. I'm not going to guilt you at the end. Just, if the curtain pulling back is your kind of thing, come along for the rest of these. That's it. Now let's get into the actual madness.
Here's the thread. I want you to hold on to this the entire way through, because everything, every single segment, every study, every founding father in a fur cap, hangs off of it.
Here's the thread. I want you to hold on to this the entire way through, because everything, every single segment, every study, every founding father in a fur cap hangs off of it.
America was not won by muskets first. It was won inside people's heads. And this is the crucial part, the part that makes it dark psychology and not just history. The people being influenced never felt influenced. Read that again. A farmer in 1774 who suddenly hated the king, he'd toasted his whole life. He didn't feel like a slogan had rewired him. He felt like he'd woken up. A woman spinning her own rough cloth instead of buying smooth British fabric didn't feel pressured by her neighbors watching through the window. She felt virtuous, free, better than the people who hadn't joined yet. The men who threw 92,000 pounds of tea into Boston Harbor didn't feel like a managed mob following a script. They felt like the boldest men alive.
America was not won by muskets first. It was won inside people's heads. And this is the crucial part, the part that makes it dark psychology and not just history. The people being influenced never felt influenced. Read that again. A farmer in 1774 who suddenly hated the king he toasted his whole life. He didn't feel like a slogan had rewired him. He felt like he'd woken up. A woman spinning her own rough cloth instead of buying smooth British fabric didn't feel pressured by her neighbors watching through the window. She felt virtuous, free, better than the people who hadn't joined yet. The men who threw 92,000 pounds of tea into Boston Harbor didn't feel like a managed mob following a script. They felt like the boldest men alive.
That's the fingerprint. That's the whole thing. Real influence, the kind that actually moves history and actually moves you, never feels like influence from the inside. It feels like your own idea. It feels like waking up. It feels like being generous, being brave, being smart. The manipulation is invisible precisely because it hands you a flattering story about yourself and lets you climb inside it.
That's the fingerprint. That's the whole thing. Real influence, the kind that actually moves history and actually moves you, never feels like influence from the inside. It feels like your own idea. It feels like waking up. It feels like being generous, being brave, being smart. The manipulation is invisible precisely because it hands you a flattering story about yourself and lets you climb inside it. And 250 years later, nothing about that has changed. Nothing. The same levers are running on you every single day, in the ad, in the feed, in the campaign, at your job, on the date, and you don't feel those either. You feel like you. You feel like you're just thinking your own thoughts. Now, before we start, I need to hand you one object, one thing to carry. George Washington's reading glasses. A single pair of spectacles. Small metal frames, plain glass, the kind of thing a man in his 50s pulls out when the words on a page start to swim. Nothing about them looks like a weapon. Nothing about them looks like the most devastating psychological move in the entire founding of the country. But there's a cold March night in 1783. The war basically won, the fighting essentially done, when the whole thing nearly collapses. Not from a British army, from Washington's own officers. Armed, furious, ready to march on their own government and burn the young republic down before it ever really lived. And what stops them? What stops an actual military coup dead in under a minute is not a speech, not an order, not a sword. It's those glasses. It's one small, human, almost accidental gesture with a pair of reading glasses that breaks a room full of hardened soldiers into tears. Hold on to that, because that's where this whole thing ends, and I promise you, when we get there, you're gonna feel it in your throat. So here's my promise to you. The deal for the next stretch of your life you're about to hand me. Every trick I show you tonight, I'm gonna prove twice. Once in the past, this exact lever, with real names and real dates and real numbers, built a nation between 1754 and 1783. And once in the present, this exact same lever is being pulled on you today, in your pocket, right now. 2 payoffs per trick. No history lesson that leaves you safe on the far side of a museum rope. Every single one lands back on you. Deal? Cool. Let's go. Segment 1. Fear and belonging. The oldest 1-2 punch there is. Let me put you in the scene. The year is 1754. You're a colonist, let's say Pennsylvania, a tradesman, ink on your fingers, maybe. The French and their native allies are pressing down from the frontier, and the colonies are a mess. Not a country, not even close. 13 bickering little worlds, each with its own government, its own money, its own suspicion of the others. New York doesn't trust Virginia. Massachusetts thinks it's better than everybody. You've never once in your life thought of yourself as an American. There's no such thing. And then you open the newspaper, the Pennsylvania Gazette. It's the 9th of May, and there, printed in black ink, is a picture unlike anything you've seen in a newspaper before. A snake. But not a whole snake. A snake chopped into 8 pieces, each segment labeled with the initials of a colony or a region. And underneath, 4 words. Join or die. And here's the crazy part. You feel it before you think it. Your eye goes to the pieces, the severed snake, the wrongness of a thing cut apart, and there's this instinctive recoil, this small dread. A cut-up snake is a dead snake. Everybody in 1754 knows that, and you, the reader, you're one of those pieces. You're a segment lying there in the dirt, separated, vulnerable, about to die. That's the fear. Boom. It lands in the body first, in the gut, before a single rational argument. And then, and this is the genius of it, the same image hands you the cure in the same breath. Join. Put the pieces back together and the snake lives. The snake is whole, dangerous, alive. Fear, then belonging. The wound, then the bandage. And the bandage is us. Unity. Together. Let me explain why this actually works on the machinery of a human brain. Fear narrows you. When you're afraid, your mind stops considering nuance and starts hunting, fast, for safety, for a group, for a wall, for someone on your side. Fear is the most powerful social glue there is, because a frightened animal desperately wants a herd. So you show someone a threat, a cut-up snake, a scary frontier, an enemy, and in the very same gesture you offer them the herd, the belonging, the wall. And they will run toward that belonging and feel, the whole time, that they chose it. They'll feel brave. They'll feel loyal. They will never once feel handled. And here's your hard number, the one that makes this not just a clever drawing. That snake, designed by Benjamin Franklin, printed May 9th, 1754, is considered one of the first viral political images in American history. It didn't stay in Philadelphia. Other newspapers copied it. It got recut, reprinted, redrawn for decades. It came roaring back 20 years later during the Revolution itself. A single woodcut of a dead snake, spreading colony to colony, stitching 13 suspicious strangers into the first faint outline of one people. One meme, before the word existed, doing the work of an army. Now here's where it lands back on you, because it never left you. Open your feed right now, any of them. What's the first thing that hits your gut? A threat and a tribe. Always. There's a danger. They're coming for your kids, your money, your country, your way of life. And there's an us, the ones who see it, the ones who care, the ones who are awake. Join or die, rebranded 1,000 ways. Every campaign ad that opens on grainy footage and ominous music and closes on a flag and a hopeful family, that's the snake. That's fear, then belonging in 30 seconds. Every outrage post that makes you feel that hot little jolt and then, right underneath, offers you a side to be on, a group of people who get it. That's the snake. The us versus them isn't an accident of angry times. It's the single most reliable way ever discovered to move a crowd. Because a frightened person clutching a tribe feels powerful and righteous, never afraid, never handled. You feel like you're standing up. You never feel like you're being steered. And once you can see the two moves, the wound and the bandage, the fear and the belonging, arriving together in the same breath, you start catching it everywhere. In the ad, in the sermon, in the group chat, in your own mouth. But fear and belonging? That's the blunt instrument. That's the sledgehammer. What comes next is quieter and, honestly, meaner. Because the next trick doesn't scare you at all. It just shows you one tidy, unforgettable picture and lets that picture quietly beat the truth to death. And a silversmith in Boston is about to run it so well that we still believe his version of a bloody night 3 centuries later. Segment 2. The tidy picture that beats the messy truth. Psychologists call it the availability heuristic, and I'll translate that instantly because it's the whole game. Availability heuristic basically means this. Your brain decides how true something is and how important it is based on how easily an image of it comes to mind. Not on the facts, on the vividness. If you can picture it fast and clear, your gut files it under real. If it's blurry and complicated, your gut shrugs. Hold on to that, because a man in Boston is about to weaponize it so perfectly that the picture in your head of a certain night, even now, even yours, is probably his lie and not the truth. Let me put you in the scene. It's the 5th of March, 1770, Boston. It's freezing, there's snow and ice in the streets, and a crowd of colonists is out in front of the custom house needling a small group of British soldiers. And when I say needling, they're throwing snowballs packed around rocks, chunks of ice, oyster shells. They're screaming. They're daring the soldiers to fire. It's chaos. It's a mob and a handful of terrified, cornered men with muskets. And in the confusion, shots go off. When the smoke clears, 5 colonists are dead. Now, the truth of that night is genuinely messy. It was a riot. The soldiers were provoked, outnumbered, frightened. There were no clean heroes and no clean villains, just a panicked, ugly, human disaster. At the trial, the soldiers were actually defended by a colonial lawyer named John Adams. Yeah, that John Adams. And most of them were acquitted, because honestly, the facts were a mess. But here's the crazy part. Nobody remembers the mess. Because within about 3 weeks, an engraving hit the streets of Boston, and that engraving decided what the event would mean forever. Paul Revere, silversmith, and it turns out, propaganda genius, produced a print he titled The Bloody Massacre. And look at what he did. In his picture, there's no mob. There's no ice, no snow, no rocks. The colonists are calm, well-dressed, innocent, falling in pools of bright red blood. And the soldiers? They're not a panicked knot of cornered men. They're a neat, orderly line, a firing squad, with an officer calmly giving the order to shoot unarmed civilians. Cold, deliberate, evil. It's not what happened. It's better than what happened. It's cleaner. It's a story with a hero and a villain and a single, unforgettable, blood-red image. And it spread, reprinted, copied, hung in homes and taverns, and it beat the messy truth into the ground. Ask an American today to picture the Boston Massacre, and I promise you they picture Revere's version. The tidy line, the ordered volley, a vivid lie that the brain filed under true because it was so much easier to see. And here's the detail that's going to sting. The twist that tells you exactly what kind of operator Revere was. He didn't even design it. The image was lifted, almost line for line, from an engraving by a young Boston artist named Henry Pelham, who'd made his own version first and shared it. Revere just got it to the market faster and slapped his name on the moment. Pelham was furious. He basically accused Revere of stealing it right out from under him. But it didn't matter. Because in an information war, the truth doesn't win, and even the original artist doesn't win. The first vivid image to reach the most eyeballs wins. Distribution beats accuracy. Speed beats fairness. Whoever gets the clean picture into people's heads first owns the memory. Let me explain why this actually runs so deep. Your brain is lazy in a very specific, very exploitable way. It doesn't store balanced accounts of complicated events. That's expensive. It stores one strong image and throws away the footnotes. So the propagandist's whole job is simple. Don't argue with the facts. Just supply a picture so vivid, so emotionally loud, so easy to recall, that when anyone reaches for the memory later, your picture is the one that jumps up first. You don't have to win the debate, you just have to win the image. And now, you already know where this lands, because you're bathing in it. Your entire feed is Paul Revere's engraving, run 10,000 times a day. The single most shareable thing on the internet is not the careful, balanced, context-rich account of an event. It's the clip, the screenshot, the one brutal image with no context, cropped to the exact frame that makes the villain look like a villain. That's the availability heuristic, industrialized. Some complicated, messy human situation happens, a confrontation, a comment, a moment 3 seconds long, and within, minutes now, not 3 weeks, the clean version races around the world. The version with a clear victim and a clear monster and a bright red pool of blood. And the messy truth, the trial, the John Adams footnote, the context, that never catches up. It never goes viral. Complexity has no distribution. So you form an opinion, hot and certain, off a picture someone chose for you. And you feel informed. You feel like you saw it with your own eyes. You never feel like a silversmith 3 centuries improved handed you a cropped lie and let you fall in love with your own outrage. And notice, this is the thread again. You don't feel manipulated. You feel awake. You feel like you're the one person who sees what's really going on. That flattering story about yourself is the trap door. Here's your defense, and it's almost embarrassingly simple, but it's brutal to actually do. When an image hits you and you feel that instant, total certainty, that hot, clean rush of, I know exactly what happened here. That feeling is the alarm. That's the moment to slow down, not speed up. Ask one question. What got cropped out of this frame? What's just past the edge of this picture? Who chose this exact 3 seconds for me to see? Because somebody did choose it. Vividness is not truth. The easier a thing is to picture, the more suspicious you should be that someone built it to be picturable. Revere's line of soldiers was so easy to see because it was designed to be seen, not because it was real. So now we've got 2 levers on the table. Fear and belonging, the snake, and the vivid, tidy image, the engraving. But both of those still need you to see the thing, the cartoon, the print. The next one is sneakier than either because it doesn't need an image at all. It needs almost nothing. Just a single sentence said again and again and again in 1,000 pamphlets and 1,000 sermons and 10,000 taverns until your brain, through pure exhausted repetition, stops asking whether it's true and simply files it under true and moves on. One line, repeated to death, until it becomes a fact that was never argued and never proven. That's next, and once you understand how it works, you're going to hear it running in every ad and every slogan for the rest of your life. So let me put you fully inside that Boston moment one more time, because I raced you past it, and it deserves the cold. It's the 5th of March, 1770. There's ice packed hard on the cobblestones, the kind that bites through a thin boot. Your breath fogs. And you weren't there. Almost nobody who formed an opinion was there. But 3 weeks later, you're standing in a Boston print shop, and someone hands you a sheet still smelling of ink, and there it is. The bloody massacre. 5 colonists dying in bright red pools. A neat rank of British soldiers, muskets level, an officer's arm raised, giving the order. Cold. Deliberate. A firing squad executing your neighbors on a quiet street. And here's the crazy part. That picture is now truer to you than the truth. Because the truth was a riot, a screaming mob hurling ice and rocks and oyster shells at a handful of cornered, terrified men, daring them to shoot. The truth was so messy that a colonial lawyer named John Adams, that John Adams, the future president, stood up and defended those British soldiers in court and got most of them acquitted. That happened. But you don't picture that. Nobody pictures that. You picture Revere's tidy line. Let me explain why this actually works, because there's a real mechanism here, and it's called the availability heuristic. Plain English. Your brain decides how true and how important something is based on how easily you can call up a picture of it. Not the facts, the vividness. If it's easy to see, your gut stamps it real. Revere gave people something devastatingly easy to see. 5 clean victims, 1 ordered volley, no ambiguity, no snowballs, no rocks. And within roughly 3 weeks, it was reprinted, copied, hung in homes and taverns across the colonies, and it simply beat the messy facts into the dirt. The complicated true version had no chance. It was blurry. His was sharp. Sharp wins. And now here's the twist that tells you exactly what kind of operator Paul Revere was. He didn't even design that engraving. The image was lifted, almost line for line, from a young Boston artist named Henry Pelham, who'd made his own version first and shared it in good faith. Revere just carved his own copy, got it to market faster, and put his name on the moment. Pelham was furious, accused him flat out of stealing it, of taking the work right out from under him. And it changed nothing. Because in an information war, the truth doesn't win. And, this is the sting, even the original artist doesn't win. The first vivid image to reach the most eyeballs wins. Distribution beats accuracy. Speed beats fairness. Speed beats even authorship. Whoever gets the clean picture into the most heads first owns the memory of the event forever. And you live inside this now, industrialized, running 10,000 times a day. Your entire feed is Paul Revere's engraving on repeat. The most shareable thing on the internet is never the careful, balanced, context-rich account. It's the clip, the screenshot, the cropped photo trimmed to the exact frame that makes the villain look like a villain. Some 3-second human moment happens, and within minutes now, not 3 weeks, the clean version with a clear victim and a clear monster is racing around the planet. And the correction? The context? The John Adams footnote that would complicate your rage? That comes out 2 days later and it goes nowhere, because complexity has no distribution. The thumbnail beats the correction every single time. So you form a hot, certain opinion off a picture someone cropped for you, and you feel informed. You feel like you saw it yourself. That's the threat again. You never feel handled. You feel awake. Your defense is one question. What got cut out of this frame? And who chose these 3 seconds for me? Segment 3. Now it gets sneakier, because this next one doesn't need a picture at all. It's called the illusory truth effect, and the plain English version is almost insulting in its simplicity. A statement repeated enough times starts to feel true, purely because it's familiar. Not because anyone proved it, not because you examined it, just because you've heard it before, and your brain mistakes that warm hum of familiarity for the feeling of truth. There's even a name for the mechanism underneath: processing fluency. Basically, if something is easy for your brain to process, easy to recall, smooth to say, your brain reads that ease as evidence that it's true. Familiar feels smooth. Smooth feels true. That's it. That's the exploit. Let me put you in the scene. It's around 1772. You're a colonist again, living your ordinary life. Trade, family, church. And there's this network spinning up, called the Committees of Correspondence. Sam Adams and others start them in Massachusetts, and they spread colony to colony, town to town. And what these committees do, functionally, is they are a distribution machine. They copy out letters, resolutions, grievances, and they send them everywhere. And the same phrases, the same complaints, the same handful of ringing lines get read aloud in one town meeting, then printed in one pamphlet, then repeated from one pulpit, then argued in one tavern, over and over, across thousands of these little nodes. And one line above all rides that machine: no taxation without representation. Say it. Feel how smooth it is. It's rhythmic. It's balanced. It fits in the mouth like it was built for it. And it was. And here's the crazy part. As a colonist, you probably never sat down and rigorously worked out the constitutional theory of it. You didn't have to. You just heard it. In the sermon, in the pamphlet, from the man at the next table, from your cousin, again and again, until the line stopped being an argument you had to evaluate and became a fact you already knew, a thing everybody knows. The repetition did the persuading, not the logic, the sheer familiar drumbeat of it, filed under true by a brain too tired to relitigate a thing it's heard 200 times. Let me explain why this actually works, because it's genuinely one of the most reliable findings in psychology. When you first hear a claim, your brain has to work to make sense of it. The second time, it's a little easier. The 10th time, it's frictionless. It slides right in. And your brain, lazy and efficient, reads that frictionlessness, that ease, as a signal. I recognize this. It must be right. It cannot cleanly tell the difference between something that's true and something that's merely familiar. Which means anyone who controls repetition controls what feels true. Not what is true, what feels true. And feeling true is almost always enough to move a person. And now you're surrounded. This is the entire architecture of modern advertising and modern politics. And once you see it, you can't stop seeing it. Every slogan, every jingle, every campaign that hammers the same 3 words into your skull on every surface until you catch yourself repeating them, defending them, believing them. Not because anyone gave you evidence, but because you've heard them so many times, they feel like your own conclusions. That's why they repeat. It's not lack of imagination. It's the illusory truth effect, deployed on purpose, with a budget. By the 10th hearing, you're not evaluating the claim anymore. You're just recognizing it. And recognition disguised as agreement is the whole trick. The jingle you can't get out of your head is not a failure of the ad. It is the ad. The line your candidate keeps saying that you now catch yourself nodding along to, remember the nod from the cold open? That's this. Same lever. 250 years apart. Your defense. When you notice you believe something, ask whether you were ever actually given a reason or whether you just heard it a lot. Familiarity is not proof. It only feels like it. Segment 4. And this one is the deepest cut of all, because the first 3 change what you think. This one changes who you are. It's identity reframing, changing a person's behavior by changing the story they tell about who they fundamentally are. And in the winter of 1776, one pamphlet does it to 2.5 million people at once. Let me put you in the scene. It's January 10th, 1776. For your entire life, and your father's life, and his father's, you have been a British subject. That is simply what you are. The king is your king. You've toasted his health. Grumbling about taxes is one thing, but you are, in your bones, a loyal Englishman living far from home. And then a pamphlet appears, written anonymously at first, by a recently arrived failed corset maker named Thomas Paine. It's called Common Sense, and you sit down to read it, and by the time you finish, the ground has moved under you. Here's the crazy part, what Paine actually does. He doesn't just list grievances. The committees already did that. He rewrites your identity. He takes the word subject and quietly retires it and hands you a new word, American. He takes the king, your father figure, God's anointed, and reframes him, in plain, brutal, funny language, as an absurdity, a tyrant, a brute. He asks why an entire continent should be ruled by a distant island, why a grown people should bow to one man simply because his ancestor was a lucky thug. He makes monarchy itself sound not sacred but ridiculous, childish, a costume. And when you put the pamphlet down, you are not a British subject who's annoyed about taxes anymore. You're an American, a member of a new people with a natural right to govern themselves. He didn't argue you across the line. He redrew the line so you were already on the other side of it. And here are your hard numbers, and they are staggering. Common Sense sold somewhere around 120,000 to 150,000 copies within months. Against a total colonial population of roughly 2.5 million people, including children, including the enslaved, including everyone. Read aloud in taverns and homes, one copy reached many ears. There has arguably never been a bestseller like it, per capita, in American history. One pamphlet, one new story about who the reader was, and a people who a year earlier could barely imagine independence were suddenly ready to die for it, because it was no longer a policy position. It was who they were now. Let me explain why this actually works. Facts bounce off people, but identity is load-bearing. Once you believe you are a certain kind of person, you will defend that belief with everything, and you'll reshape your behavior to match it automatically, because staying consistent with your own self-image feels like integrity, feels like being real. So the most powerful thing you can ever do to change what someone does is change who they think they are. Don't tell them what to do. Tell them who they are, and let them do the rest. And now, This is the most valuable dollar in all of modern marketing and politics, and it's aimed at you constantly. Nobody sells you the product anymore. They sell you the identity. Become the kind of person who wakes up at 5 and works out. This is for people who think different. Real ones know. You're not buying coffee. You're buying being a coffee person. You're not buying a truck. You're buying being a certain kind of man. Political movements don't offer you positions. They offer you an identity. This is who we are. This is what people like us believe. And once you accept the identity, the positions come free, and you'll defend them like your own name, because now they are your name. You feel like you found your people. You feel like you finally became yourself. That's the thread, one more time. You never feel reprogrammed. You feel like you woke up. Your defense, the hardest one yet, is to notice when a message is describing a product and when it's quietly describing you, and to ask whether you chose this identity or whether someone handed it to you smooth and ready to wear. Okay, take a breath. Let's tie the first batch together, because look what we've got. Fear and belonging, the snake. The vivid image that beats the truth, the engraving. The repeated line that becomes fact, no taxation without representation. And the rewritten self, American instead of subject. 4 levers. And every one of them shares that single fingerprint. The person it worked on never felt worked on. The frightened colonist felt loyal. The enraged one felt informed. The one chanting the slogan felt principled. The one who put down common sense felt awake. Heroes of their own story, all of them. Not one of them felt handled, and that is exactly why it worked. And we are just getting started, because the deeper we go, the stranger this gets. Because so far, these levers have all worked on your beliefs, what you think, what you feel, what you picture. The next batch works on something scarier. It works on your behavior directly. It gets people to act, to commit, to lock themselves in with their own hands and then guard the cage. And I told you at the very start to hold on to a pair of reading glasses, small metal frames, plain glass, sitting quietly in a coat pocket on a cold March night in 1783. We're not there yet. But every lever from here forward is a step toward that room, toward the moment those glasses come out. Keep them in your pocket. We're going to need them. And before we walk into that next room, let me sit you down with one more thing about this first batch, because there's a pattern underneath the pattern. And it's the part that should really get under your skin. Notice the order these 4 levers came in. It wasn't random. It's an escalation, and it's the exact escalation any skilled operator runs on you, then and now. First, you scare someone and hand them a tribe. That's the snake. That's the cheap, fast, gut-level hook that gets attention in the door. Then, while they're afraid and looking for a side, you feed them a vivid image that decides who the enemy is. That's the engraving. It aims the fear. Then you repeat a line until the whole framing feels like settled fact, like something everybody already knows. That's the slogan. It hardens the story into common sense. And finally, once they're scared, aimed, and marinating in the repeated story, you hand them a new identity built out of all of it. That's common sense. That's the closer, the thing that makes the whole package feel like who they are instead of what they were told. Fear, image, repetition, identity. In that order. That's not 4 separate tricks. That's an assembly line. It's a funnel. And here's the crazy part. That same funnel is running on you right now, on whatever platform you open last. The scary post catches you. The cropped clip tells you who did it. The slogan in the replies hardens it. And the little identity badge, the label, the side, the "this is who we are," welcomes you home. By the end, you don't feel like you went down a funnel. You feel like you arrived at the truth under your own steam. And I want you to really feel how gentle each individual step is. No single lever feels like manipulation. A scary headline? Normal. A dramatic photo? Normal. A slogan you've heard before? Normal. A brand that shares your values? Normal. Even nice. Every step is deniable. Every step is something a perfectly honest person might also do. Remember that, because it's coming back all night. The difference between ordinary human persuasion and deliberate manipulation is never one single move. It's the pattern, and it's the intent behind the pattern. One warm sentence is a kindness. The same warm sentence, engineered, sequenced, repeated, aimed, that's a machine. Keep that distinction sharp, because in the next batch, the machine stops working on what you believe and starts working on what you do. And once you've acted, Once you've committed with your own two hands, you become your own jailer. That's where those reading glasses are waiting. Segment 5. Reactants, or the plain English version, forbidden fruit. And here's the deal with this one. It's the lever that backfires by design, except it wasn't the colonists who pulled it. It was the British. They pulled it on their own people, over and over, and every time they yanked it, they manufactured the exact defiance they were trying to crush. Let me put you in the scene. It's the 22nd of March, 1765, the Stamp Act. And what it does is simple and suffocating. Every legal document, every newspaper, every pamphlet, every playing card has to carry a stamp you pay a tax for. Not a huge sum, honestly. That's the thing people miss. The money isn't the wound. The wound is the feeling. A distant hand reaching into your daily life, telling you what you may and may not do without ever asking you. And something in you rises up, not calculated, reflexive, a hot refusal in the chest. Nobody voted on this. Nobody asked me. And here's the crazy part. The more London tightens, the more the colonies burn. Stamp distributors are hung in effigy, their offices torn apart, the stamps never even distributed in some places. The act is so violently rejected, it gets repealed in barely a year. And Britain learned nothing. Because here comes the 10th of May, 1773, the Tea Act. And this one is almost funny because it actually made tea cheaper. Cheaper. London thought, they'll love this. Cheap tea, problem solved. But the colonists didn't taste a bargain. They tasted a trap, a soft bribe designed to get them to quietly accept Parliament's right to tax them at all. And so cheaper tea produced more fury than expensive tea ever had. Every clampdown, every clever fix manufactured the precise rebellion it was meant to prevent. Let me explain why this actually happens. There's a thing in your head, a deep one, that guards your sense of freedom. When someone tells you that you cannot do a thing, cannot have a thing, cannot think a thing, your brain doesn't just register the rule. It registers a threat to your autonomy, and it fights back to restore it. And the fastest way to restore a freedom someone's threatening is to go do the forbidden thing, hard, on purpose. The prohibition itself makes the thing precious. The ban is the advertisement. Tell a free person no, and no becomes the most interesting word in the world. And now, oh, this one's aimed at you constantly, and it's aimed with a smile. The limited drop, the countdown. Only 500 made, only available for 48 hours, then gone forever. It's not scarce because it has to be. It's scarce because forbidden and disappearing makes you want it in your bones. This content is not available in your region, and suddenly you need to see it. A book gets banned somewhere and its sales explode overnight, because nothing sells a book like someone powerful trying to keep it from you. Sold out is a sales tactic. The velvet rope is the product. Every time you feel that hot little, I'll decide that for myself, flare when something's restricted, understand, that flare is real, that flare is yours, but somebody may have lit it on purpose, because your reflex to reclaim a freedom is the easiest thing in the world to hijack. Your defense. When you notice you suddenly, urgently want something right after being told you can't have it, pause and ask, do I actually want this, or do I just want the freedom back? Those are two different hungers, and only one of them is really yours. Segment 6, social proof, or everyone else is doing it, so it must be right. And in the colonies, this one didn't stay in your head. It moved onto your neighbor's porch, where she could see whether you were doing it too. Let me put you in the scene. It's the late 1760s, early 70s. The colonists organized boycotts of British goods. No British cloth, no British tea, no British luxuries. And to replace British cloth, there's the homespun movement. You make your own rough, homemade fabric. And here's what actually enforced it, and it's chilling in how ordinary it is. Your neighbors could see. Spinning wheels come out onto porches. Women hold public spinning bees, dozens of them together, turning out homespun in the open where everyone can watch and count. What you wear becomes a visible ballot. Smooth British fabric on your back, everyone knows what you are. Rough homespun, you're one of us. You're loyal. And the man who keeps drinking British tea, the merchant who keeps selling British goods, he gets named, published, shamed, his shop shunned. Let me break the felt steps. Step 1. You look around to see what everyone else is doing. That's automatic. That's human. You can't turn it off. Step 2. You see everyone spinning, everyone boycotting, everyone in homespun. Step 3. Doing the same thing stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like the only decent option. And doing the opposite starts to feel not just wrong, but dangerous, exposed. And here's the crazy part. Nobody had to force most people. The visible crowd did the forcing. When you can see that everyone around you has already committed, your brain treats that consensus as evidence. Surely all these people can't be wrong. And it treats standing apart as a threat because being cast out of the tribe is, to the oldest part of your brain, a death sentence. Let me explain why this runs so deep. For almost all of human history, the group was survival. Alone, you died. So evolution wired you to monitor the group and match it, fast, often below conscious thought. Being the one person out of step doesn't just feel awkward, it feels physically wrong. Because for your ancestors, being out of step got you left behind. That wiring doesn't know it's the 21st century. And now, this is the entire engine of your feed, and it's measured to the digit. The like count, the view count. The number is right there, telling you how many others already approved, before you've even decided what you think. A post with 100,000 likes feels true before you read it. The dissenter who gets ratioed, buried under 10,000 replies telling him he's wrong, you watch that happen and, without deciding to, you learn to stay quiet, keep your odd opinion to yourself. And the silent majority, the huge quiet middle, gets nudged and nudged by whichever crowd looks biggest and loudest, because visible numbers manufacture the sense of consensus, and manufactured consensus moves the quiet ones. You feel like you're just seeing what people think. You're actually being shown what to think by a scoreboard someone chose to display. Your defense. Notice when a number is doing your thinking for you, and ask whether 10,000 people agreeing has ever, once, made a false thing true. Segment 7. And this one is my favorite in the whole video. Because it looks like pure chaos, and it's actually pure choreography. Manipulation as theater. The Boston Tea Party. Let me put you in the scene. It's the night of December 16th, 1773. Boston Harbor. Freezing. Dark. And a group of men board 3 ships, and over about 3 hours, haul up 342 chests of tea, roughly 92,000 pounds of it, split them open, and dump every leaf into the black water. And in your head, because you've been told mob your whole life, you picture drunken chaos, a riot, men smashing everything in a frenzy. Now here's the crazy part, and it's in the details almost nobody tells you. It wasn't chaos. It was one of the most disciplined operations you'll ever hear about. The men disguised themselves, loosely, symbolically, as Mohawk warriors, faces darkened, and that disguise wasn't really about hiding identities everyone already knew. It was costume. It was image-making. They were signaling, we are Americans of this land, not Englishmen. And the discipline, listen to this. They destroyed only the tea, nothing else. They didn't loot the ships. They didn't touch the crews. When one man tried to pocket some tea for himself, the others stopped him. And afterward, this is the detail that gives me chills. They swept the decks clean. They put everything back in order. And when they'd accidentally broken a padlock belonging to one of the ship's captains, they later replaced it. They replaced the padlock. That is not a mob. A mob does not tidy up. That is a carefully managed image of righteous, disciplined protest, staged for an audience, for the other colonies watching, for London, for history. See how it connects to Revere's engraving from earlier? Same instinct. Control the picture. Don't let the truth be messy. Make it clean. Make it noble. Make it exactly the story you want remembered. Quick thing, and I'll only say it once. If you're still with me this deep, if the padlock detail did to you what it did to me, that's exactly the kind of viewer this channel is for, so hit subscribe and come find the rest. That's the whole ask. I'm done. Back to the harbor. And now, staged authenticity is everywhere you look, and it's the hardest to catch because it's dressed up as the opposite of manipulation. It's dressed as realness. The spontaneous moment that took a team of 40 and 3 weeks to plan. The candid, no makeup, just woke up photo that was lit and shot 40 times. The brand that shows up at the protest, cameras ready, activism as a marketing campaign. A padlock replaced for the audience. The messy, authentic live stream that has a run of show. Every time something is sold to you as raw, real, unfiltered, spontaneous, that is precisely the moment to wonder who swept the decks before you got there. The most manipulated image of all is the one engineered to look like it wasn't managed at all. Your defense? Realness that's performed for you is still a performance, and the tell is always the audience. Ask who this was staged to be seen by. So we've done reactance, social proof, and theater. 3 ways to move what people do. But there's one more commitment lever, and it's the strongest of all, because the first 3 push you from the outside. The last one gets you to lock the door from the inside, with your own name, in ink, where everyone can see it. 56 men are about to sign a piece of paper that could get them hanged, and the signing itself is the trap. But before we sign anything, I want to go back to that harbor for one more minute, because there's a layer of the theater I rushed past, and it's the layer that turns a clever protest into a masterpiece of psychology. Think about the choice of the tea itself. Not the tax office, not a government building, not a soldier. Tea. The most ordinary, domestic, everyday thing in a colonial home. Every household had it. Every family drank it. And by destroying that, publicly, ceremonially, 92,000 pounds of it swallowed by black water, they turned a private habit into a public loyalty test overnight. After that night, every single cup of British tea in every parlor in America carried a question. Whose side are you on? They didn't just dump tea. They poisoned the meaning of tea. See how it links back to the homespun movement, to the spinning wheels on the porch? Same move. Take an ordinary object of daily life and load it with allegiance, so that people police themselves and each other through the most mundane choices. What you drink, what you wear. Suddenly there's no neutral ground left, no private life, nowhere to just not have an opinion. And a person with nowhere neutral to stand will pick a side and defend it like it was always theirs. And here's the crazy part about the disguises, the part that makes it psychology and not just costume. Those men darken their faces and put on the loose look of Mohawk warriors. And yes, it was symbolic, a claim on the land, but it did something to the men themselves too. There's a thing that happens when you put on a disguise, when you become anonymous inside a group, when your own face is hidden and you're just one of many identical figures moving in the dark. You become capable of bolder things than you'd ever do as yourself. Psychologists call it de-individuation. Plain English, when you can't be singled out, when you're absorbed into the mask in the crowd, the normal brakes come off. The men of the Tea Party weren't only signaling to London, they were freeing themselves. The costume gave each man permission to be braver, harder, more committed than George or Samuel or Paul, standing alone in daylight, ever could have been. The mask didn't just hide them from the authorities, it hid them from their own hesitation. And that lever, hand someone a mask, hand someone a crowd, and watch what they'll do, is running at full scream right now, and it's arguably the darkest thing about the modern internet. The anonymous account, the username instead of a name, the faceless avatar in a swarm of 10,000 identical avatars, all piling onto the same target. People type things behind a handle that they would never, ever say with their own face attached, their own name underneath, standing in front of the person. That's not a new kind of cruelty. That's de-individuation. The exact same mechanism the Tea Party men used to find their nerve, except now it's pointed at a stranger who said the wrong thing on a Tuesday. The mob in the disguise and the mob in the mentions are running the same ancient software. And here's the uncomfortable part for you and me both. We feel it too. You felt braver, harsher, more certain inside an online pylon than you'd ever be face to face. That's not you becoming yourself. That's you losing yourself in the crowd. Your defense is almost cruelly simple. Before you type it, ask whether you'd say it with your real face, to their real face, in a quiet room with no audience. If the answer is no, it's the mask talking, not you. And notice, this is the thread again, beating right under everything. Not one of those men on those ships felt manipulated. They felt like patriots. They felt disciplined, righteous, brave, part of something enormous. The organizers who chose the tea, chose the costumes, choreographed the discipline, staged the whole tableau for a watching world. They handed each participant a flattering, thrilling story about himself, and each man climbed inside it and rode out into the freezing dark, believing it was entirely his own idea. That's the whole fingerprint. The best managed image in the colonies, and the people inside it felt the most free. And I want you to hold that word, free, because it's about to become the trap. Because everything in this batch so far has pushed people from the outside. Reactance pushed against a rule. Social proof pushed with the crowd. Theater pushed with a staged image. All external, all pressure applied to you. But there's a deeper kind of commitment, and it doesn't push you at all. It waits for you to step forward on your own, to raise your own hand, to say the words yourself. And the instant you do, it closes behind you. And now, you're not being pushed anymore. Now, you're pulling. Now you guard the position because it's got your name on it. Nothing on earth locks a human being in place like their own public word. And that's exactly what's about to happen in a hot room in Philadelphia in the summer of 1776. Because a document is coming that is not really an argument at all. Common sense was the argument that changed minds. What's coming next changes something harder than a mind. It takes 56 men who have already been persuaded, and it asks them to do one small, irreversible thing. Write their names, in their own hand, on a public page, under words that amount to a death warrant if they lose. And the genius of it, the reason it's one of the most powerful commitment devices ever built, is that the signing doesn't just record the decision. The signing becomes the decision. Once your name is on the paper, once the whole world has seen it, you can never quietly walk it back. You will defend that signature with your life, precisely because it is your signature. The pledge is the cage, and every man builds his own and locks it with a pen. That's where we're going. Keep those reading glasses in your pocket. We're getting closer to the room where they come out. Segment 8, Commitment and Consistency. Or, in plain terms, the thing where, once you've publicly said you're a certain kind of person, you'll go to almost any length to keep proving it, even to your own ruin. And the most famous piece of paper in American history is, underneath the poetry, a machine built to do exactly that. Let me put you in the scene. It's the summer of 1776, Philadelphia. A closed room, windows shut against spies in the heat, the air thick and wet. And a document is adopted on the 4th of July, the Declaration of Independence. Now, I'm going to be honest with you the way the story usually isn't, because the honesty makes it better, not worse. Most of the delegates didn't actually sign it on the 4th. The famous signing, the big parchment with all the names, mostly happened later, the bulk of them on August 2nd, 1776. The 4th is when the text was adopted. August is when most of the men walked up and put their names down. 56 of them, in the end. And here's what those signatures actually were. Not decoration. A trap that each man sprang on himself. Because every name on that page was, in the eyes of the British Crown, a signed confession of treason. If the revolution failed, that parchment was a list, a hanging list. These men knew it, and that's why the final line of the thing lands the way it does. They pledge to each other their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. Read that again. Not we hope, not we intend. We pledge. Everything. Publicly. In writing. In our own hands. And here's the crazy part. That pledge isn't aimed only at the world. It's aimed inward, at the signer. Because a human being who has publicly, in writing, with his own name, staked his life and his honor on a cause, can no longer quietly change his mind. He's locked. Not by chains, by consistency. By the unbearable weight of contradicting his own signature. Let me explain why this actually works, and it's one of the deepest grooves in the whole mind. Once you take a public stand, a private tug of war starts inside you, and it never really stops. The need to stay consistent with what you already said. Backing down means admitting you were wrong, weak, a fraud, and the brain will do almost anything to avoid that feeling. So it doesn't back down. It digs in. It reinterprets doubts. It finds new reasons to believe what it already committed to. The public word doesn't just record the belief. It hardens it into identity. Those 56 men didn't sign because they were certain. Signing is part of what made them certain and kept them certain through 8 brutal years when quitting would have been so much easier. The signature became the spine. And now, this lever is in your pocket, wearing a friendly little costume. It's the streak. It's the public pledge. The fitness app that posts to your friends that you worked out. So now you can't skip, because skipping isn't between you and your body anymore. It's between you and everyone watching. The New Year's resolution you announced out loud, which is why breaking it stings 10 times worse than a quiet one. The savings challenge, the reading goal, the little green squares you can't bear to break. And it goes darker too. The comment you fired off in an argument that you now have to defend forever because deleting it feels like losing, so you double down on a position you don't even fully believe anymore. Companies know this cold. Get you to say yes to something small and public. Sign up, share, declare your goal, join the challenge, and you'll defend that identity long after the enthusiasm's gone. The trick is always, make you say it out loud, in front of others, in your own words. Your defense. Notice when your reason for doing something has quietly shifted from "I want to" "I already said I would." Those are different masters, and only one of them is you. Okay, that closes out the second batch. And look at what we've built. Reactance, social proof, theater, commitment. 4 levers that don't just change your mind, they move your body, your hands, your name. And every single one carries the fingerprint. The colonist defying the Stamp Act felt free. The neighbor at the spinning bee felt loyal. The man on the tea ship felt brave. The delegate signing his death warrant felt noble. Not one felt handled. And honestly, this is the exact kind of thing we go deep on all over this channel. So if it's landing for you, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe. It genuinely helps more than you'd think. And we are just getting started, because the deeper we go, the more personal this gets. Because everything so far has been mass persuasion, snakes and slogans and pledges aimed at thousands, the next batch shrinks down to something far more intimate and far more unsettling. One person, working on one person, face to face. And it's here that we finally meet the man who's been lurking behind half these tricks, Benjamin Franklin, not as a distant founder in a painting, but as the single most dangerous charmer who ever lived. And I still owe you a pair of reading glasses in a cold room. We're one batch away now. Keep them close. Segment 9. The Ben Franklin Effect. And if you've watched this channel before, you know this one's a favorite of mine, and I've been waiting to put it in its real historical home, because it's named after a real thing Franklin actually did, and it is so backwards it breaks people's brains. Let me put you in the scene. The year is 1736. You are Benjamin Franklin. You're a young, ambitious man in Philadelphia, and you've just won a seat as clerk of the Pennsylvania Assembly. And there's a problem, a rival. Another legislator, wealthy, educated, powerful, who does not like you. At all. He's given a speech against you. He's working to undercut you. And you know that if this man keeps opposing you, he can strangle your whole career in the cradle. So what do? Here's what a normal person does. You try to win him over. You do him favors. You flatter him. You help him. You bring him gifts. You make yourself useful, hoping that kindness melts the ice. And you would think that works, right? You're not alone. But Franklin doesn't do that. Franklin does the opposite. And it's genius. He hears this man owns a certain very rare and curious book in his private library. So Franklin writes him a note, not offering a favor, asking for one. Would the gentleman do him the great kindness of lending him that rare book for a few days? And the man, flattered to be asked, to be treated as a person of taste and generosity, sends it over. Franklin reads it, returns it about a week later with a warm note of thanks. And the next time they meet in the assembly, a man who had never so much as spoken civilly to Franklin now greets him with real friendliness, offers to help him, and, in Franklin's own telling, they remained close friends until the man's death. Let me break the felt steps, because they're maddening. Step 1. You get your enemy to do you a small favor. Step 2. And this is the whole thing. His mind now has a problem. It's holding 2 facts that don't fit. I did something kind for this man, and I can't stand this man. That contradiction is uncomfortable. Step 3. The brain resolves the discomfort the lazy way. It doesn't undo the favor. That already happened. So instead, it quietly rewrites the feeling. It concludes, I must actually like him. Why else would I have helped him? The behavior came first, and the feeling reshaped itself to match. He did Franklin a kindness, so his mind decided Franklin was worth the kindness. Here's the crazy part, the thing that inverts everything you think you know about winning people over. We don't do favors for people because we like them. We come to like people because we've done them favors. Getting someone to invest a little bit in you, a small ask, a tiny bit of effort, binds them to you harder than any gift you could ever give them. And now, this is being run on you constantly, and it starts absurdly small. The salesman who asks you to hold something for just a second. The app that asks you to fill in one tiny detail, then another, then another. Because every little bit of effort you invest, every small favor you grant, quietly rewrites your own mind into thinking you must be doing this because you like it, because you're into it, because you chose it. It's the free trial you set up, the profile you spent an hour building, the small yes that becomes a big one. And in dating, it's brutal and real. The person who asks you for little favors, who lets you help them, who lets you invest, often ends up with a tighter grip on your heart than the one who showered you with gifts, because you have talked yourself into loving what you've poured yourself into. Your defense? Notice when you're justifying your feelings towards someone by the effort you've already spent, and ask whether you actually like them, or whether you just can't stand the thought that all that investment was for nothing. And here's what makes Franklin so genuinely frightening as an operator. He didn't just understand how to make an enemy like him, he understood how to make an entire nation like him. Because a few decades after that borrowed book, an old man in a fur cap is going to walk into the most sophisticated royal court on earth, in Paris, wearing a costume tailored to their exact fantasy of him, and he's going to charm an empire into bankrolling a revolution, playing a character that wasn't remotely who he really was. That's next. But before Paris, I want to sit inside that Philadelphia moment a little longer, because there's a detail in the Franklin story that most people skip, and it's the detail that turns a cute anecdote into a genuine weapon. Notice what Franklin asked for. Not money, not a vote, not political backing. A book. Something small. Something that cost the rival almost nothing to give. A week without a volume he probably wasn't reading anyway. And that's not an accident. That's the entire engineering of it. Because the ask has to be small enough to say yes to easily, but real enough that the man actually has to do something. Actually has to get up, find the book, wrap it, send it over. If Franklin had asked for something big, the rival would have said no, and a no does the opposite. A no lets a person justify their dislike. Every hard no you get from someone hardens their heart against you, because now their brain has to explain why they refused. And the easy explanation is because I don't like him. But a small yes? A small yes forces the mind into that sweet, uncomfortable little contradiction that it can only resolve by deciding it likes you. The size of the ask is everything. Too big, you get refusal and more enemies. Just small enough, and you get a convert who thinks the whole thing was his idea. And here's the crazy part. Franklin knew this in 1736, wrote about it plainly in his own autobiography, quoted an old maxim he lived by. He that has once done you a kindness will be more ready to do you another than he whom you yourself have obliged. He that has once done you a kindness. Sit with how backwards that is. The person who helped you is more loyal than the person you helped. It violates every instinct you have. You'd think generosity buys loyalty. You'd think the person you did favors for owes you, likes you, is bound to you, and you're not alone in thinking it. But you're wrong, because the person you were generous to often feels the quiet weight of the debt and resents it, while the person who did you the favor has rewritten their own heart in your favor for free. Franklin didn't just stumble into this. He used it deliberately for decades, on rivals, on committees, on kings. And let me connect it back to something, because this is the thread doing its work. Remember the commitment device, the signature on the declaration, the way doing a thing changes who you believe you are? The Franklin effect is the same machinery, just miniaturized and pointed at one person's heart. Action first, feeling second. The signer acts and becomes certain. The rival lends the book and becomes a friend. In both cases, the behavior comes first and drags the emotion along behind it. And in both cases, the person feels like the emotion came first, like they signed because they believed, like they helped because they liked him. Nobody ever feels the gears turn. That's the fingerprint, every single time. And I want to make sure you feel how this one lands on you specifically, because the modern version is so smooth, you'll never see it as manipulation. It'll feel like your own warm heart. Think about the friend who's always asking you for small favors. Can you grab this? Can you help me move this one box? Can you look over this real quick? And you say yes, and you say yes again. And somewhere in there, you notice you feel closer to them, more invested, more fond, and you credit that to them being a good friend. But flip it. What if the closeness came from the favors, not the other way around? What if every little yes was quietly stitching you to them? Now that's not automatically sinister. A real friendship is built on mutual small favors flowing both directions. And that's beautiful. That's how humans bond. That's the good version. Here's the line, and I want you to hold it because it's the line for this whole video. The difference between a friend and a manipulator is never a single favor. It's the pattern and the intent. A friend asks and also gives and doesn't keep score and doesn't need you bound. A manipulator only draws, never pours, and needs you invested. And the favors all run one way, toward them. One warm request is human. A one-way current of them, engineered, is a leash. Watch the direction of the current. That's the whole tell. And it works because it hides inside your best qualities. That's what makes the personal operators so much darker than the mass tricks. A slogan works on your laziness. A crowd works on your fear. But the Franklin effect works on your generosity. It takes the most decent impulse you have, the impulse to help, to be kind, to say yes, and it turns that impulse into the very rope that binds you. You can't defend against it by being colder or meaner, because then you lose the thing that makes you good. You can only defend against it by staying awake, by keeping one small, quiet part of your mind watching the direction of the current, even while your heart is being generous. Give freely. Just know why you're giving, and to whom, and whether anything is ever coming back the other way. So hold that man in your mind. Young Franklin in 1736, writing that flattering little note, already understanding people better than they understand themselves. Because the astonishing thing about Benjamin Franklin is that this borrowed book trick, this intimate one-on-one manipulation, was just the seedling. It was the small-scale rehearsal. The full-grown version of that same genius is about to walk across an ocean into a palace of mirrors and silk and the most cynical, sophisticated aristocrats on the planet, people who ate charmers for breakfast, who had seen every flatterer and every con, and he is going to fool all of them. Not by being cleverer in argument, by walking in as a character, a costume, a performance so perfectly tuned to what they wanted to see that they handed him the money and the fleet that would win the war, and felt the whole time like they were the sophisticated ones. An old man in a fur cap, playing dumb, playing simple, playing the noble savage of the New World for an audience that desperately wanted the show. And that, the deliberate manufacture of a persona, the weaponizing of an image, the halo, is one of the most important levers in this entire video, because it's the one you're drowning in right now and don't even recognize as a trick. That's where we're headed next. Keep those reading glasses in your pocket. We're getting so close to the room now I can almost feel the cold coming off it. Segment 10. The halo effect. Or, in plain English, when one striking thing about a person is so vivid that it quietly paints your entire judgment of them. So a single trait bleeds out and colors everything, and you mistake looking a certain way for being a certain way. And the greatest halo con in the founding of America was pulled off by a 70-year-old man in a hat made of animal fur. Let me put you in the scene. It's December 1776. Benjamin Franklin arrives in Paris, sent to beg the French crown for money, weapons, ships, for the alliance that the whole revolution depends on, because without France, the colonies lose. Full stop. And Franklin knows something about the French. He knows that the fashionable philosophers of Paris, the salons, the court, are all obsessed with a fantasy. The noble child of nature, the wise, simple man from the untamed New World, unspoiled by the corruptions of European civilization. Rousseau's dream made flesh. And Franklin, who was, in reality, one of the most sophisticated men alive, a printer, a scientist, a diplomat, a wit who'd charmed London and dined with royalty, Franklin looks at that fantasy and decides to become it. So he puts on a costume. He shows up not in the powdered wig and silk of a gentleman, which he owned and knew perfectly well how to wear, but in plain clothes, spectacles, and a soft cap of marten fur on his head. And here's the thing. That fur cap did not belong on a Philadelphia intellectual. It was theater. It said backwoods sage. It said honest frontier philosopher. It said, I am the authentic natural man you've been dreaming about. And Paris, lost its mind. They put his face on medallions, on snuff boxes, on rings, in prints hung all over the city. Women wore their hair styled after his cap. He was the most famous, most beloved man in France. And here's the crazy part. Most of them believed he was some kind of humble Quaker sage, a plain man of pure, simple virtue. He wasn't a Quaker. It was a character. A brilliant, deliberate, fully authored character. And he wore it all the way to the treaty that won the war. Let me explain why this actually works. Your brain is desperate to save energy, so instead of evaluating a person on all their separate qualities, it grabs one loud, obvious trait and lets that stand in for the whole. Franklin looks humble and natural, therefore he must be honest, wise, trustworthy, good. One visible trait, and the whole judgment follows it like a shadow. The fur cap wasn't just charming, it was doing an argument's worth of work without ever making an argument. It made an entire nation trust him before he opened his mouth. And now, this is the entire economy of the modern personal brand, and you're swimming in it. The tech founder who walks on stage in a plain gray shirt and worn jeans, and that costume whispers, "I am not about money. I am a simple visionary who only cares about the mission." The exact same fur cap 3 centuries later. The billionaire who tweets like a shitposting everyman so you'll forget the empire. The influencer whose whole feed is curated to look uncurated, whose messy authenticity is lit and staged so that one vivid trait, realness, relatability, humility, halos out over everything, and you trust the pitch that follows. You see the plain shirt, and your brain fills in, honest, humble, one of us. You see the fur cap, and you fill in, wise, pure, good. Your defense? Separate the trait you can see from the claim you can't. Ask, what exactly is this one striking thing making me assume about everything else? Because a persona is an argument someone is making without letting you notice it's an argument. Segment 11. Timing and urgency. And this one is about a truth every operator knows in their bones. It's not just what you say, it's the exact hour you say it. The right words at the wrong moment do nothing. The right words at the moment of maximum despair can turn an army around. Let me put you in the scene, and I want you cold for this one. It's late December, 1776. You're a soldier in Washington's army, and the war is basically lost. You've been beaten, chased across New Jersey, your force is shrinking by the day, men deserting, enlistments about to expire, some of you with no boots, feet wrapped in rags, leaving blood in the snow. It's freezing, the cause feels dead, and around you in the dark, before a desperate, insane gamble, a crossing of the ice-choked Delaware River on the night of December 25th into the 26th to strike the enemy at Trenton, someone reads aloud. Thomas Paine again. A new pamphlet, The American Crisis, published just days before, on December 19th. And the first words land in the frozen dark like a hand on your shoulder. These are the times that try men's souls. He doesn't deny how bad it is. That's the genius. He names it. The summer soldier, the sunshine patriot, the ones who shrink from the service of their country when it's hard. He tells you that what's cheap, we hold cheap, and that it's the hardness of the fight that makes the victory glorious. And here's the crazy part. Those words were deployed at the precise hour of maximum despair, read to freezing, beaten men on the edge of a suicidal river crossing, and they didn't break. They crossed. They marched 9 miles through sleet in the black of night. They won at Trenton, and it flipped the entire momentum of the war. Let me explain why this actually works. When a person is exhausted, frightened, and cornered, when despair has stripped away all their normal defenses, the critical, skeptical, arguing part of the mind goes quiet. There's no energy left to resist, and into that raw, open, undefended state, you pour meaning, purpose, a reason to hold on. Urgency plus vulnerability collapses resistance. Paine didn't persuade those men with logic. He reached them in the one moment their guard was already down, and he gave their suffering a story worth enduring for. And now, this exact lever, urgency, aimed at your undefended moment, is being pulled on you every single day, and it's usually pulling money out of your pocket. The countdown timer, ticking on the checkout screen. Remember the very first thing I put you in? That. Only 3 left in stock. Offer ends at midnight. This price won't last. Because urgency shuts down the same careful, skeptical part of your brain that despair shut down in those soldiers. When the clock is running, you don't deliberate, you don't compare, you don't sleep on it, you grab. Because the manufactured now or now never floods you with just enough low-grade panic to switch off the part of you that would have said, wait. Almost none of those clocks are real. The scarcity is invented. The deadline resets tomorrow. Your defense is one sentence. Real opportunities survive a good night's sleep. If something can only be decided right now, right this second, that pressure is the product, and the pressure is aimed at the part of you that's tired and wants the deciding to be over. Okay, I want you to slow down with me now. Let the pace drop, because we've come to the edge of it, the room I've been promising you since the first minute. Let's hold the whole thread in our hands one last time before we step inside. 12 levers, or nearly. Fear and belonging, the vivid image, the repeated line, the rewritten self, forbidden fruit, the watching crowd, the staged theater, the public pledge, the borrowed book, the fur cap, the ticking clock. Every one of them different, and every one of them the same underneath. The person it worked on never, not once, felt worked on. They felt patriotic, generous, brave, awake, righteous, smart, heroes of their own story. That's the fingerprint. That's the whole video in one sentence. And now, the reading glasses. The pair I handed you in the very first minute and told you to keep in your pocket. Small metal frames, plain glass. Take them out, because we're about to walk into a bare wooden hall in Newburgh, New York, on a freezing afternoon in March 1783, where the young country is about to die at the hands of its own army, and where one man is going to reach into his coat and pull out these glasses and do the single most devastating thing in this entire video. Not with a weapon, with a gesture. And I'm not going to summarize it for you. I'm going to walk you into that room and let you stand there, in the cold, and watch it happen in real time. Every rustle of paper, every hand, every throat. Because this is the biggest story I have, and it deserves to be lived, not told. So take a breath, button your coat, we're going in. But before we cross that threshold, I owe you the full weight of how bad it actually was. Because a scene only hits as hard as the danger underneath it. And the danger here was the whole country. Let me set the ground under your feet. It's the winter of 1782 into 1783. The shooting war is essentially won. Yorktown was over a year back. The British are basically beaten, but the peace isn't sealed, and the army is still camped at Newburgh, up the Hudson River in New York, waiting. And these men are furious. Bone-deep, dangerous furious. Because they haven't been paid. Some of them in years. Officers who mortgaged their farms, who bled, who watched friends freeze and starve, who were promised pensions, and Congress, broke and squabbling and jealous of a standing army, keeps not paying, keeps stalling, keeps sending them nothing but excuses. And these are not raw recruits. These are hardened, victorious soldiers with weapons in their hands and a government that seems to be laughing at them from a safe distance. You can feel where that goes. Everyone could feel where that goes. And here's the crazy part. Some of them had started to do the math out loud. If the army marched on Congress, who would stop them? They'd won the war. They had the guns. A frustrated officer, or the men behind him, could simply take the government. Every republic in history up to that point had eventually been swallowed by its own military. The general who wins the war turns around and seizes the throne. Caesar, it's practically the default ending. The young United States, this fragile experiment barely born, was standing exactly on that cliff edge in the mud at Newburgh. And into that camp, in early March 1783, a letter starts circulating. Anonymous, beautifully written, inflammatory. It calls the officers to a meeting, and it argues, in essence, that patience has failed and it's time to take a harder line, to threaten Congress, to refuse to disband, maybe worse. Some historians tie the sentiment to men close to the circle of officers who wanted to use the army as a club against Congress. The point is, the fuse was lit. A meeting was called, and the mood in that camp was mutiny. And this is the thread, one more time, right at the worst possible moment. Because the men drawn toward that anonymous letter, they didn't feel like traitors plotting a coup. They felt wronged. They felt righteous. They felt like brave men who'd been used and discarded, and were finally standing up for their own honor and their own families. Heroes of their own story, every one of them, about to strangle the Republic in its crib while feeling like the good guys. That's the fingerprint, running now on the men who'd been running it on everyone else. The manipulators, about to be manipulated. The only question is, by whom? And toward what? Now, Washington. Understand what he's actually facing, because this is the hardest spot he's ever been in, and he's been in some spots. He could crack down, arrest the ringleaders, use force, and if he does, he might spark the very mutiny he's trying to stop, turn the army against him, and prove that the Republic runs on the sword after all. Or he could look the other way and let the anger march on Congress and become himself the king so many people half wanted him to be. Both roads end the same place, the death of the thing they'd all just bled 8 years to build. He needs a third road. He needs to reach into a room full of armed, betrayed, furious men whose minds are already made up, men who love him but who are past listening, and turn them, without force, without bribes, in a matter of minutes. He needs the deepest lever there is. And here's the part that should give you chills, knowing everything you now know. George Washington understood these men's hearts the way Franklin understood that rival legislators. He'd been reading people his whole life, and he'd already decided, quietly, exactly how he was going to do it. So let me put you in the room. It's the 15th of March, 1783. The Ides of March, and if you know your Caesar, your skin should prickle at that, because everyone in that century knew it too. They're gathered in a big, plain, newly built wooden hall in the Newburgh camp, a building they'd been using for meetings and even for dancing, sometimes called the Temple. Raw timber, cold coming up through the floorboards. Outside, the last hard bite of a Hudson Valley march, snow still in the shadows, the river gray and grinding with ice. Inside, benches full of officers, coats buttoned, breath faintly visible, boots scraping, low voices, the particular charged quiet of men who've come to do something drastic and are working themselves up to it. The anonymous letter has done its work. The general in charge of the meeting is one of their own. Washington was not even supposed to be there. And then the side door opens, and he walks in. Uninvited, unannounced. And you can feel the room change, a stiffening, a surprise, maybe a flicker of resentment, because some of them didn't want him here. This is exactly the man whose restraint they've grown tired of. He asks the presiding officer for permission to speak. He steps up to the front. He's 51 years old. He's enormous in their imagination, and right now, strangely alone up there. And he takes out a speech he's prepared, pages in his hand, and he begins to read it, an appeal to their patience, their patriotism, their honor, an argument to trust the process and not stain everything they'd won with one rash act. And here's the crazy part. It's not working. You can feel it not working. These are not men in the mood for another careful speech about patience. They've had years of patience. Patience is what got them robbed. Faces stay hard. Arms stay crossed. The words are good, but they're landing on stone. He can feel it too. The most respected man on the continent, standing in front of the army he built and losing them in real time, sentence by sentence, the room slipping away toward the cliff. Whatever he'd planned, it isn't enough. And this is the moment, the true hinge of the whole American experiment, this bare, cold room, this failing speech, this handful of seconds where everything hangs by a thread. And then Washington stops. He reaches into his coat and he pulls out a letter, a separate thing, a letter from a congressman about the Army's pay that he means to read aloud to them as evidence that their case is being heard. He looks down at it and he stumbles. The words on the page won't quite come. He squints. He pauses, a beat too long, an awkward, human, unbearable pause, the kind that fills a silent room like water. And then he reaches back into his pocket and takes out something almost none of them have ever seen him wear. A pair of reading glasses. Those glasses, the small metal frames, the plain glass, the pair I put in your pocket in the very first minute of this whole thing, 4,000 words ago, and told you to hold on to. Here they are, and I need you to hold this frozen instant with me, his hands at the little frames, the officers watching, not one of them making a sound, the cold coming up through the floor, because what he says next, in the next handful of seconds, ends a coup and saves a country. And he does it not with a single word of the speech he prepared, but with the smallest, most human gesture a tired man can make. And I'm going to walk you all the way inside it. But first, take a breath, because we are standing in the exact center of the whole video now, and everything, every lever, every trick, everything you've learned to see tonight is about to collapse into one old man, one pair of glasses, and one sentence he was not supposed to say. So here we are. The glasses are in his hands, and I want you to stand in that room and not miss a single second of it, because the next minute is the one everything else was built for. The hall is silent. Not polite silence, the other kind, the held breath kind. The kind where you can hear the timber tick as the cold works into it and a bench creaks somewhere in the back as a big man shifts his weight and then goes still. Washington is at the front, alone, the failed pages of his speech in one hand, the congressman's letter in the other, and now these small metal frame glasses catching the gray light from the windows. And the officers are watching him fumble. This man who crossed the Delaware in the ice, this man who held the whole war together with his own spine for 8 years, who never flinched, who they had literally never seen falter, and here he is, squinting at a page, unable to read it, his hands working at a pair of spectacles like any tired old man at a kitchen table. And he pauses, and the pause stretches. 1 second, 2, past 3, past 4, long enough that it stops being a pause and becomes a thing happening in the room, a silence with weight, every officer leaning into it without meaning to. And into that silence, quietly, almost like an apology, half to himself, he says something close to this, and I'm paraphrasing honestly, because the witnesses remembered it in slightly different words, and I won't put a fake quote in his mouth. He says, "Gentlemen, you will permit me to put on my spectacles, for I have grown gray in your service, and now find myself growing blind." And that's it. That's the whole weapon. Grown gray in your service, going blind. Watch the room now, because it happens fast, and it happens in the body. A man in the second row, one of the hard ones, arms crossed a minute ago. His jaw moves, his throat works, up and down, once, like he's trying to swallow something that won't go. Another one turns his face toward the wall, quick, and drags the back of his hand across his eyes and pretends it's nothing. Somewhere, a breath comes out ragged. Heads drop. Big, weathered men who marched 9 miles through sleet, who buried their friends in frozen ground, who walked into this room an hour ago ready to point their army at their own government. They are sitting on those benches with their hands over their faces, shoulders going, unable to look up. Because they'd forgotten. In all their righteous fury about their pay, their pensions, their honor, they had let themselves forget what this had cost him. The gray hair, the eyes, the 8 years. He didn't argue them out of it. He didn't threaten. He just stood there and let them see, for one unbearable second, an old man who had given everything and had nothing left to give but the giving itself. And it broke them clean in half. He finished reading the letter. Most historians say he barely needed to. He gathered his pages and walked out, and the moment he was gone, the officers fell over themselves to disavow the whole thing, voted overwhelmingly to reject the anonymous appeal, to affirm their faith in Congress, to condemn the very mutiny they'd walked in ready to start. The coup didn't get argued down over hours. It died in that room in under a minute. One gesture, one pair of glasses, one glimpse of a man's weakness, and the Republic lived. And here's the turn, the one I need you to really sit with. The deadliest weapon in that room was not a threat. It wasn't force, it wasn't authority, it wasn't a single one of the 11 levers we spent this whole night mapping. It was a weakness, shown on purpose. Or, and this is the part that should keep you up, maybe not on purpose at all. Maybe his eyes really were going. Maybe the pause was real. Maybe he genuinely just needed the glasses and stumbled into the most devastating moment of persuasion in American history by pure human accident. And here's the crazy part. It does not matter. That's the whole terrifying beauty of it. Whether Washington calculated that gesture down to the second, or whether it burst out of him raw and true, the effect on those men was identical. The line between a sincere moment and a perfectly deployed one had vanished. And that's the deepest thing this whole video has to teach you, because the most powerful influence of all doesn't look like influence. It looks like a human being, tired, honest, showing you a crack. It disarms you completely because it doesn't feel like a weapon. It feels like the opposite of a weapon. It feels like trust. And now, brace yourself, because this one is aimed straight at your heart. Every day. The founder who tears up on stage at the keynote, voice cracking at exactly the right beat. The influencer who sits in the car, no makeup, and says, I have to be really honest with you guys. I've been struggling. Right before the pivot to the sponsor. The politician who lets his voice break talking about his kids. The manager who opens the hard meeting with a confession of his own failures so you'll lower your guard for what comes next. Calculated vulnerability is the most advanced persuasion tool there is, precisely because we've all been trained to trust the crack in the voice, to believe that the person showing weakness must be sincere. And most of the time, they might be. But some of the time, that tremble is the tell, the letter pulled from the coat, the pause held past 4 seconds, the glasses that break the room. Your defense isn't to stop trusting vulnerable people. It's to notice when a confession arrives right before an ask, because real weakness doesn't usually come with a call to action attached. So let's bring it all home. Because look back down the whole road now. The snake, the engraving, the slogan, the pamphlet that made you an American, the forbidden tea, the watching neighbors, the swept decks, the 56 signatures, the borrowed book, the fur cap, the ticking clock, and now an old man's glasses in a cold wooden hall. 12 stories, 250 years, and one single fingerprint on every last one of them. The person being moved never felt moved. The colonist felt patriotic. The soldier felt brave. The rival felt friendly. The officer wept and felt only love. And you, scrolling, shopping, voting, swiping, you feel like you. You feel like you're just thinking your own thoughts, having your own reactions, making your own calls. That's not a coincidence across the centuries. That is the mechanism. Influence that you can feel isn't working yet. Influence only works when it feels like your own idea. And that hands you the one master key, the only defense that works on all 12 at once. It's not becoming cold. It's not trusting no one. It's the pause. It's the tiny gap between the feeling and the action where you get to ask one question. Why am I feeling this, right now, so strongly? The jolt of missing out, the flash of outrage, the warm nod at the familiar slogan, the sudden urgent want, the surge of belonging, the melt of someone's confession. Name it while it's happening. Just name it. Oh, that's urgency. That's social proof. That's the fur cap. That's a vulnerability play. Because here's the thing. Every single one of these levers has in common. They all die the instant you see them. They only work in the dark. Naming the thing while it's happening is the whole game. That's the master key. That's it. And I want to be really clear about something before I let you go, because it would be so easy to walk away from all this poisoned and paranoid, and that's the wrong lesson. Persuasion is not the villain here. Read that again. Every trick in this video, the fear and the belonging, the repeated line, the shown weakness, those same levers built a country. They took 13 suspicious colonies and made them one people. They carried freezing men across a river towards something better. They talked an army out of a coup and let a fragile experiment in self-government live. Influence isn't evil. It's just power. And like any power, it can build or it can rob. The goal was never to make you cynical. The goal is clear sight, not to trust no one, to see the machinery so it can never again run you without your knowledge. So here's your one small assignment for the week. Don't try to catch all 12. Just pick one. Pick a single reflex and watch for it. Maybe the countdown clock. Maybe the outrage image. Maybe the slogan you catch yourself nodding along to. And the next time you feel it fire, don't fight it. Don't even resist it. Just name it. Say it quietly to yourself. There it is. That's all. Catch one reflex, one time this week. Because once you've caught it once, you can never fully unsee it again. And those glasses. I'll leave you with those glasses. 250 years ago, in a freezing wooden hall, an old man reached into his pocket, and a country lived because of what a room full of hardened soldiers saw through the plainest, most human object imaginable. The mind games that built America never stopped. They're running right now, in your hand, in your feed, in your chest, dressed up as your own patriotism, your own generosity, your own good sense. The levers are exactly the same. The only thing that's changed in 2.5 centuries, the only thing is that now, tonight, you can see them. So put on the glasses, keep your eyes wide open, and stay warm, and stay kind while you do it. Thanks for going this deep with me. I'll see you in the next one. Now let me take you back into that room before the officers walked out, because I raced you through the seconds that actually mattered, and those seconds deserve to be slowed down and lived, breath by breath. Go back to the pause, the one that stretched past 4 seconds. I want you to understand what was physically happening in that hall while Washington's fingers worked at the little metal arms of those spectacles. Because the silence wasn't empty, it was doing all the work. Think about who was in the room. These weren't strangers. Many of these officers had stood beside this man at Valley Forge in the winter of 1777 into 78, when the army was dying of cold and hunger and smallpox, when men left bloody footprints in the snow because they had no shoes, when the whole cause looked finished. They'd watched him then. They'd watched him not eat better than they ate, not sleep warmer than they slept. And now here he was, gray, squinting, fumbling, and every one of those shared winters was in the room with them, uninvited, the way he was uninvited, pressing down on their chests. And here's the crazy part about the timing of it, because timing is a lever we already named, back with Payne in the Delaware, and Washington, whether he planned it or not, hit the exact same note. He didn't reach for the glasses at the start, when their guard was up, when they were braced for a lecture. He reached for them after his speech had already failed, after their arms were crossed, after they'd decided they'd won the argument against him. He was at his lowest in that room. He'd been rejected, and it was from that lowest point, that undefended crack, that the gesture came. Same as the freezing soldiers before Trenton, the message lands hardest not when the audience is strong and skeptical, but the instant something has stripped their defenses away. Except this time, the defenses that dropped weren't theirs, they were his. He lowered his own guard first, in front of them, and their guard collapsed in answer. Because that's the deepest reflex a human heart has. You show me yours, mine falls open. And I keep coming back to this, and I need you to really hold it, because it's the hinge of the entire video. Those men did not feel manipulated. Not then, not later, not ever. Read their letters afterward, and you find grown soldiers describing that afternoon as the most moving moment of their lives, describing tears they weren't ashamed of, describing a love for the old man that only deepened. If someone had walked up to a weeping officer that evening and said, "You understand you were just played," that gesture may have been aimed at you like a rifle. That officer would have knocked him down, because it didn't feel like a trick. It felt like truth. It felt like witnessing something sacred. And that exact feeling is the fingerprint we've been chasing since the first minute, worn now by the most honorable man in the story, in the most honorable moment in the story. That's what should unsettle you. The lever doesn't only live in the hands of con men and tyrants. It works just as well, maybe better, in the hands of a genuinely good man serving a genuinely good end. The mechanism does not care about the morality. It just works, every time, on the noble and the wicked alike. And let me sit you in one more piece of that room. The vote. Because the coup didn't just quietly evaporate. Watch what these men did once Washington was gone and the door had closed behind him. They were still an army with grievances, still unpaid, still wronged. None of that had changed in the last 5 minutes. Their situation was identical, and yet they turned, almost as one body, and passed resolutions declaring their unshakable loyalty to Congress, their abhorrence of the anonymous appeal that had nearly moved them, their faith in their country's justice. Men who had walked into that hall an hour earlier, ready to point muskets at their own government, walked out having voted to condemn the very idea. Nothing about the facts had shifted, only the feeling, only the thing they'd seen through a pair of plain spectacles. That's how total it was. A room that arrived at mutiny, left at devotion, and the only thing that happened in between was that an old man let them watch him struggle to read. And here's the detail that gives the whole thing its final chill and connects it straight back to the man in the fur cap. Washington and Franklin were cut from stranger cloth than we pretend. Franklin authored a costume for Paris and knew exactly what he was doing. Washington, whether by instinct or design, and we genuinely cannot know which, authored a moment in Newburgh that did more than any army ever could. Two of the most consequential acts in the founding of this country were not battles. They were performances of the self, pitched with uncanny precision at exactly what an audience needed to see and feel. One man played strength, dressed as simple wisdom. The other played weakness, dressed as nothing at all. No costume, no cap, just a tired body and a pair of glasses. And both performances landed. And both times, the people watching felt they were seeing something completely real. So when you go back out into your day tomorrow, and this is where all of it starts pointing home, I want you carrying not just the 12 tricks, but this one uncomfortable truth underneath them. The more sincere something feels, the less that feeling tells you about whether it's engineered. The crack in the voice, the honest confession, the vulnerable pause, those aren't proof of authenticity. They're just the most advanced disguise authenticity can wear, and the one your defenses are least equipped to question. Because you were built, across all of human history, to trust the person who shows you their soft underside. That instinct kept your ancestors alive in small, trusting bands, and in a world of keynote stages and confessional cameras and letters pulled from coat pockets, that same beautiful instinct is the exact door they walk through. Which brings us, finally, to the only thing that can keep that door honest. And it's smaller and simpler than you'd ever expect. It's the pause. Still. Always. The same tiny gap I keep pointing at because it really is the whole defense, and I want to show you exactly how it works in the wild before we close this out, because a master key you don't know how to turn is just a piece of metal in your pocket. Here's the thing about every single lever we've walked through tonight, all 12 of them, from Franklin's snake to Washington's glasses. They are all fast. That's their nature. They work in the half second before thought catches up. The jolt of the countdown timer, the flash of heat when the outrage image hits, the warm, settling nod at the familiar slogan, the sudden, urgent wanting when a thing is forbidden, the melting softness when someone shows you a crack. Every one of those is a reflex, and a reflex by definition happens before you decide anything. That's why they work. They're not arguing with the slow, careful, rational part of you. They're sneaking underneath it, hitting the old, fast machinery directly. And by the time your reasoning shows up to the scene, the feeling is already there, already yours, already wearing the costume of your own opinion. You don't experience it as a manipulation landing. You experience it as, I want this. I believe this. I feel this. Past tense. Done deal. So the defense can't be more thinking. That's the trap people fall into. They hear all this and they go, okay, I'll just be smarter. I'll analyze everything. I'll argue with every ad. And that fails, because you cannot out-reason a reflex that fires before reason arrives. The defense has to live in the gap. It has to be faster and smaller than an argument. It has to be one word. Name it. That's it. The instant you feel the surge, whatever it is, you say the name of the thing to yourself. There it is. That's urgency. That's the crowd. That's the fur cap. That's a vulnerability play. That's fear and belonging. And here's the genuinely magic part. The part I need you to trust me on and then go test for yourself. The naming doesn't just help you resist. The naming is the resistance. Because the instant a lever is named, it stops being a feeling that's happening to you and becomes an object you're looking at. And you cannot be moved by something you're looking at from the outside. The spell only works from the inside. Step outside it, even an inch, even for 1 second, and it loses its grip. That's why they all die in the light. That's why awareness isn't just part of the defense. Awareness is the entire defense. There is no second technique. There's just this. See the thing while it's happening, and it can't run you. And I know, that sounds almost too small to be the answer to a video this big. You sat through 250 years of the most sophisticated psychological engineering in human history. Snakes and engravings and coups, and the master key is, notice it? Say its name? Yeah, that's the whole thing. Because the people running these levers are not counting on being clever enough to beat your reasoning. They're counting on you never turning around to look. The entire economy of manipulation, then and now, runs on one assumption, that you'll stay asleep, that you'll feel the jolt and never once ask where it came from. Every ad, every feed, every countdown clock is a bet that you won't look. So the single most radical, disruptive, powerful thing you can do, the thing that genuinely takes the power back, is just to look, to catch it, to turn around inside the moment and name what's grabbing you. It's small because it has to be small. If it were hard, nobody could do it. It's small so that you actually can. And I want to say the anti-cynicism thing one more time, harder, because it's the part people get wrong when they learn all this, and getting it wrong will poison your whole life. When you first start seeing the machinery everywhere, and you will, within a day of finishing this, you'll catch 3 of these before lunch. There's a temptation to curdle, to go, everything is manipulation. Everyone is running an angle. Nobody is sincere. I trust no one. Don't. That's not clear sight. That's a new kind of blindness. Because remember what these levers actually did. They didn't only sell sneakers and rig outrage. They took 13 squabbling colonies who'd never once thought of themselves as one people, and they made a nation. They put steel into the spines of freezing, barefoot men and carried them across a black river toward a better world. They talked a victorious army out of becoming the thing that had ended every republic before it, and let a fragile, radical, beautiful experiment in self-government take its first breath. Persuasion built all of that. Influence is not the villain of this story. Influence is how humans move each other to do hard, good, necessary things. A parent encouraging a scared kid is using influence. A friend talking you off a ledge is using influence. The doctor who gets you to take the medicine. The teacher who makes you believe you're capable. Influence. All of it. And thank God for it. The lever is just a tool. It builds or it robs, depending entirely on the hand that holds it and where it's aimed. The goal was never to make you trust nothing. The goal is to make you able to tell the difference, to see the hand, to see where it's pointed. That's clear sight. Cynicism is easy, and it's lazy, and it's just fear wearing a smart coat. Clear sight is harder, and it's better, because it lets you stay open, stay warm, stay movable by the good things, while staying unrunnable by the rest. So, your assignment. I told you not to try to catch all 12, and I meant it, because you'll try, and you'll miss most of them, and you'll feel like you failed, and you'll quit. So don't. Just pick one. One single reflex. Maybe it's the countdown clock, because those are everywhere, and they're the easiest to spot. Maybe it's the outrage image in your feed, and that hot, clean rush of certainty. Remember, that certainty is the alarm. Maybe it's the slogan you catch yourself nodding along to, or the sold out that suddenly makes you want the thing, or the confession that arrives right before the ask. Pick one. And this week, not forever, just this week, every time it fires, don't fight it. Don't lecture yourself. Don't feel bad. Just name it. Quietly. There it is. That's all I'm asking. Catch one reflex, one time. Because here's what happens, and it's the reason I made this whole thing. The first time you catch one in the act, the first time you feel the timer's little panic and you go, oh, that's the clock. That's just the clock. Something clicks over in you that does not click back. You cannot unsee it. Once you've watched one lever try to move you and named it out loud, you start seeing them everywhere. And the seeing gets easier and faster and more automatic until one day, it's just how you move through the world. Awake, warm, open, and quietly, permanently unrunnable. That's the whole gift. It starts with one. And so we come back, one last time, to the glasses. Picture them. Small metal frames. Plain glass. Nothing about them looks like anything. They sat in a coat pocket in a freezing wooden hall in Newburgh, New York, on the 15th of March, 1783. And when an old man reached in and put them on and let a room full of hardened soldiers watch him struggle to read, a country that was about to strangle itself in its cradle chose, instead, to live. Not because of a musket, not because of a threat, because of what those men saw through the plainest, most human object imaginable. A tired man, giving what was left of himself. The mind games that built America didn't end with the war. They didn't end with the treaty. They didn't end at all. They're running right now, in the phone in your hand, in the feed you'll open the second this is over, in the little cold jolt in your chest, and the warm nod you didn't decide to give. Dressed up, every one of them, as your own patriotism, your own generosity, your own good and decent sense. The levers are exactly the same as they were 250 years ago. Franklin would recognize every one of them. Washington would too. The only thing that has changed in 2.5 centuries, the single only thing, is that now, tonight, sitting here at the end of all of this, you can finally see them. So put on the glasses. Not his, yours, the ones this whole video just handed you, and go back out there into the noise and let yourself be moved by the true things and the good things and the people who love you. Be generous, be brave, be a hero of your own story. Just do it with your eyes open now. Catch one this week. That's all. Catch one, name it, and feel the floor of the world tilt very slightly back under your own feet. That's it from me. I'm your host, and this has been Hidden Levers, the channel where we pull back the curtain on the machinery running underneath everything. Thank you for going this deep with me, genuinely. Stay warm, stay open, keep those glasses on, and I'll see you in the next one. Actually, wait. Before I let you walk out that door, let me make the master key concrete, because I don't want you leaving with a nice idea. I want you leaving with a thing you can actually do on Tuesday afternoon. So let me put you in a few ordinary scenes, the small ones, the ones that don't feel like Newberg at all, and show you the lever mid-pull, so your eye is trained before you even need it. Picture this. You're standing in a checkout line, the real kind, and by the register, there's a little rack of stuff you did not come for. Gum, a phone charger, some gadget, and you feel a small tug toward one of them. Nothing dramatic, just a little, why not? Stop right there. That rack is not an accident of where they had spare shelf space. That's decades of engineering, aimed at the exact moment your decision-making is exhausted from the whole trip, when your guard is lowest and a small yes is easiest. The same undefended moment lever, pain aimed at the freezing men, shrunk down to a pack of mints. Name it. Oh, that's the tired brain grab. And watch the tug just loosen. You might still buy the gum, that's fine. But now you're choosing it instead of it choosing you. And that's the whole difference between a free person and a handled one. Picture this. You open your feed, and within 4 seconds, something has made you angry. Genuinely, hotly angry. That clean, righteous heat. And your thumb is already moving to share it, to say something, to pile on. Here's your pause. Ask the one question we learned from Revere's engraving. What got cropped out of this frame? And who chose these 3 seconds for me to feel exactly this? Because that heat, that certainty that you know precisely what happened and precisely who the villain is, that is the availability heuristic firing at industrial scale. A picture someone selected to make you feel this and share this. You don't have to become numb to injustice. You just have to notice when your outrage is being farmed. Name it. That's the crop. And feel how the heat cools just enough to let you think again. Picture this. You're on a date, or 3 dates in, and this person keeps asking you for small favors. Hold this. Help me with that. Can you look at this for me? And you notice you feel closer, more invested, warmer toward them with each one. Now this might be the beginning of something real and beautiful. Or it might be the borrowed book, 1736, Run on Your Heart. So don't panic, and don't go cold. Just watch the current. Does it ever run the other way? Do they pour as well as draw? Is there mutual small effort, or is it a one-way river flowing toward them? Name it. Am I liking this person, or am I liking what I've invested in them? That question doesn't kill love. It protects the real thing by catching the counterfeit. See what's happening in all 3? You're not becoming suspicious of the world. You're becoming fluent in it. It's like learning a language you were always surrounded by, but never quite heard. And once you hear it, you can't stop hearing it. And it doesn't make the world uglier. It makes it clearer, sharper, more yours. The gum rack, the crop, the current, the clock, the fur cap, the confession before the ask. A dozen little tells, and each one you catch trains your eye for the next, until the catching stops being work and becomes just how you see. And here's the last honest thing I owe you, because I've been running these levers on you all night, and I'd be a hypocrite not to say it out loud. This video used them too. The cold open with the countdown timer, that was urgency, aimed at you, to keep you watching. The promise of a pair of glasses that stopped a coup, planted in the first minute and held back until the very end, that was an open loop, a curiosity gap, a lever, deployed on purpose to carry you across 20,000 words. The way I kept saying us, kept building a little tribe of you and me, the smart friends at 1 a.m. who see the machinery, that was belonging. I did it on purpose. And here's why I'm telling you, why I'm pulling my own curtain back. Because that's the difference. That's the whole line this entire video has been drawing, from the very first segment. The difference between persuasion and manipulation was never the tools. It's the same tools, always the same tools. The difference is whether the person using them will show you their hand. A manipulator needs you never to see the lever. That's the entire game. It only works in the dark. So the moment I show you mine, name mine, hand you the ability to catch me doing it, it stops being manipulation and becomes something else. It becomes teaching. It becomes a gift. The lever pointed at you with the lights on and the mechanism exposed can't run you because now you're looking at it. Same tool, opposite thing. And that's the proof, right here in real time, that awareness really is the master key. Because you just watched me use every trick in the video on you, and now that you can see them, not one of them owns you. So that's what you're walking out with. Not paranoia, not a list of enemies, just a trained eye and one small habit. The pause, the name. There it is. And the deep, settling knowledge that the machinery running underneath your day is old and human and beatable, and that beating it costs you nothing but a half-second of attention you can absolutely afford. 250 years ago, a handful of brilliant, flawed, dangerous people learned to move a nation from the inside, and the people they moved felt like heroes the whole time. Tonight, you learn to feel the strings while they're being pulled. That's not a small thing. That's the difference between living inside someone else's story and writing your own. Go pick one. Catch one this week. And then go be moved, deliberately, joyfully, with your eyes wide open, by every good and true thing that deserves to move you. That's it from me. I'm your host, and this has been Hidden Levers, the channel where we pull back the curtain on the machinery running underneath everything. Thanks for going this deep with me. Stay warm, stay open, keep the glasses on, and I'll see you in the next one.